The Asvine V200 is a large vacuum filling fountain pen that's mostly made out of clear acrylic, but it also features titanium accents. And recently, Asvine decided to anodize these accents in what they refer to as the rainbow finish. A big thanks goes out to Wendy from Asvine for generously donating this pen to my channel. I really appreciate not only your generous donation, but you trusting me with your product. The top finial is flat and it features a recessed circular groove. And then we have a pretty narrow bent metal clip. It has a rounded edge and it is springy and functional with a pretty wide range of motion. The cap is straight all the way down to a metal band that reads Asvine V200. Before we take this cap off, I want to note there's a pretty large clearance between the top of the nib and the top of the inner cap, which means it's pretty easy to swap in nibs from other pens to customize your writing experience. The cap comes off in 1 and about a half turns to reveal a number 6 size stainless steel nib. It's also rainbow in color, and I have this one in a medium made by Asvine. You can also get it in extra fine as well as fine, and you can get this in nibs made by Bock. And on the back, we can see a black plastic feed with a pretty thin profile. The grip section has a nice length and it's hourglass in shape, and then we have threads which are a little bit sharp to the touch. The barrel is straight all the way to the back where we see a flare down to the end finial, and that end finial features 2 blue colored O-rings to help secure posting. And on the bottom, it's squared off. If I give the finial a twist, we can see that it will retract the rod inside the pen. Retracting that rod opens up a shutoff valve, which allows ink to flow between the barrel and the grip section. If I pull the rod back, we now have access to the filling system. Put the nib into ink and push down on the rod. Pushing down will create a low pressure system behind the piston head, and at the bottom we can see a step out in the barrel. That breaks the seal and allows ink to flow into the pen. In the hand, the pen is a very comfortable length. It has good heft thanks to that vacuum filling system, and it's very well balanced. A comfortable pen to use for long writing sessions. The cap does post securely thanks again to those O-rings, but it doesn't post very deeply. It makes the pen quite back-weighted and long. And also because it posts directly onto the piston knob, if you're not careful, you could accidentally pull the rod up when you're trying to remove the cap. So for those reasons, I recommend only posting if you have the piston knob all the way screwed down. In terms of size comparisons, here's the Asvine V200, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. Before we disassemble the Asvine V200, I wanted to take a moment to compare it with a few other vacuum filling fountain pens. Up top is the Pilot Custom 823, which is the only vacuum filling fountain pen that Pilot makes, and it's a grail pen for many collectors. Below the V200, we have the Asvine V126, which shares many more design similarities with the 823 than the V200. The V126 also is available in a wide variety of colors, whereas the V200 is only available in clear, and you can either get it with a standard titanium or the rainbow finish that we have here today. And at the bottom, we have a TWSBI Vac Mini, which is the smallest vacuum filling fountain pen that I own, and I think it might be the smallest that's on the market as well. All pens in this case have bent metal clips, and let's take a look at them with their caps removed. All caps unscrew, and in their uncapped form, the V200 is a bit longer than the rest. Let's take a closer look at these sections and nibs. All 4 nibs are fully exposed and all are stainless steel with the exception of the Pilot, which has a 14 karat gold nib. The grip section on the Pilot and the V126 are pretty similar with a flare-up followed by a tapering profile. The TWSBI features a straight grip section followed by a flare-up to the body, and the V200, as we just saw, has a nice hourglass shape. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps posted. All caps post securely. The TWSBI is the only one with a screw-to-post cap, and the V200 is the only one with a cap that posts directly onto the piston knob, which makes it the longest of the bunch. In order to disassemble the V200, you are going to need an adjustable wrench. And you may find grippy materials are also useful to have. The cap unscrews, and we can see there is no cap liner in this cap, just a step up there to seal off the nib. So for regular cleaning, I would run this under warm water, and if you see some stubborn ink stains, go ahead and let it soak with some mild detergent or pen flush, and then use a rolled up paper towel to help work it out. The grip section can be unscrewed from the barrel. And then if you want to remove the nib and feed, we can grab them with our grippy materials and give it a counterclockwise turn. Those are held in place in this nib collar. If you want to remove the nib and feed, you can just pull them straight out, again with those grippy materials. They are quite snug in there. And then those just come right apart. Next, if you want to remove the filling unit, we're going to unscrew the back piston knob and pull it back. Doing so reveals two flats, which we can grab a hold of with our wrench. And we'll give that a counterclockwise turn. I like to unscrew using the barrel instead of the wrench. That way I don't over torque it and possibly crack the acrylic. Pretty soon I should be able to pull the rod out. Perfect. And then we have an empty barrel. And at this point, the pen is fully disassembled. To reassemble, I'm going to start with the barrel and the filling unit. Before I do, I want to note that there is a trim ring there, which does tend to come out. If it does come off, just note that there is a ridge side and a flat side. The flat side faces out. We'll put the piston rod into the middle of the barrel and tighten it down. I like to tighten first by hand. And then we'll grab our wrench to tighten it down the rest of the way. At this point, the vacuum filler should be functional. That sounds great. Next, we'll do the nib and feed. There isn't anything on the feed to orient the nib, so I'm going to just align it the best I can. The nib shoulders should line up with the shoulders of the feed, and it should be pretty symmetrical. And then the collar does have a flat at the bottom there, which lines up to a flat on the feed. And that's really good to see. That's going to help prevent the feed and nib from freely rotating when you're trying to remove this collar from the grip section. And those just screw together. And then we'll reattach that to our barrel. And lastly, our cap. And at this point, we're ready to ink up. Inking up the V200, today I selected Iroshizuku Asagao, which is a nicely saturated deep blue / purple ink, and it really hugs the walls of clear demonstrators beautifully. In order to make this filling a little bit more visible, I put some of that ink into this ink miser. We're going to go ahead and unscrew the cap and pull the piston all the way back. Put the nib into the ink and push down on the piston. In order to get a more full fill, I'm going to put the nib upright. I'll wipe off some of the extra ink so that I don't get an inky mess. And I'm going to put this over paper towel. We'll pull the rod all the way back. And then I'm going to slowly push the air out of the barrel. Be careful not to push the rod past the breaking point. At that point, you're going to spew all of the ink out of the top of the nib. So this is definitely a hack where you need to be a little bit cautious. I'm going to stop right there. Keeping the rod in the same position, we'll go ahead and put the nib back into the ink and push down. At this point, we have a pretty full fill. Go ahead and wipe off the excess ink. cap up our pen, and we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Asvine V200. Cap unscrews, and now that we have this pen inked, we can see another feature, which is a clear ink window just in front of that shutoff valve. Right now it is fairly dry, but if I open up the back piston knob, we can allow ink to flow in and it should become a bit more opaque. Just like that. And today we have a stainless steel medium nib with a nice rainbow finish. And I really like this nib. It is smooth with a moderate amount of feedback. I would say somewhat similar to how Platinum tends to polish their nibs. It also has really nice ink flow. However, unfortunately, that's not how this pen came out of the box. The nib's tines were actually quite tight and it was a little bit starved of ink. So what I did was I took a brass shim and I spread out those tines, and after I did that, it now writes beautifully, consistently with a nice ink flow. Speaking of ink, today we have one from Iroshizuku. And it is called Asagao. For flex, I'm going to turn the page. You can push out a little bit of line variation, but not a huge amount. And for reverse writing. Quite smooth. It is drier than the front ways up, and actually I did run out of ink as I crossed that T. So it might not be the most reliable writer in reverse, but if you're in a pinch for a thinner line, you could certainly consider reverse writing. So what do I think of the Asvine V200? I really like this pen. I think it has a beautiful design aesthetic that's sleek, minimalist, and quite modern. I also like the rainbow color on the trim pieces. That adds a little bit of extra warmth and fun to maybe an otherwise fairly sterile design. And I love that they carried that rainbow coloring all the way down to the nib. That's a great attention to detail. Also, because it is a demonstrator fountain pen, naturally the standout feature is the filling system, and vacuum filling systems are among my favorite. I love how easy they are to operate with a simple downstroke, plus there are hacks like the one that I showed to get a full barrel fill, and they also have a very utilitarian shutoff valve, which allows you to control the amount of ink that goes into your grip section so that you don't have burping during long writing sessions or during air travel. Also in the hand, it's a very comfortable pen. I think that the grip section is nice, how long it is, and this beautiful hourglass shape. It provides good grip where it doesn't feel like my fingers are going to slip off. And also, as I get too close to the nib, that flare out is a good reminder. But I also do see areas where this pen could be improved, and actually this grip section is one of them. There's nothing wrong with the hourglass shape in my opinion, but the threads just behind it are a little bit sharp to the touch. And I wish that Asvine maybe took a little bit of extra time to machine these threads more smoothly. And speaking of sharp edges, the back piston knob also has a sharp edge with this flare out at the bottom. And unfortunately, I have pinched my fingers a few times on this edge when filling up the pen. Also, I love that Asvine included the wrench and extra O-rings in the package. That shows that they really care about the long-term durability and serviceability of this pen. But also those O-rings to me are kind of a band-aid to a fairly poor posting system. Yes, the O-rings allow you to post securely, but the cap simply does not post very deeply. It's back-weighted and quite long. I think if you have very large hands, it might be an okay pen to use posted, but for me, with medium-sized hands, it's just simply a little bit back-weighted. But overall, I do really like this pen. I think that it is quite comfortable to use, especially when it's not posted. and it's a beautiful pen in the hand that really highlights the ink of choice. Plus, with these beautiful rainbow trim pieces, you can mix and match any ink in your collection with this pen and it will look quite stunning. And that's something I can't say about most of the pens in my collection. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.